Prowl. On the surface, Prime's most senior security officer and military strategist, one of his most level-headed and reliable soldiers. But under the surface, he is a master manipulator, mind-controlling his friends, murdering his rivals, killing thousands of innocents in false flag ops, destroying entire planets. And oh yeah, there was the time he tried to kill Optimus too. Guys, I would love it if you hit like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and let's take a look at his deeds, and specifically his shadiest schemes and deals. And in the process, we might figure out why he is the way he is. In the Gen 1 cartoon, he was a dependable soldier for Prime to rely on. He would use Hound's laser maps to formulate strategies against the cons, coordinate missions such as this rescue attempt, which split the Autobot group into two, and attack the cons battlecruiser from both above and below. You know, the old you go high, I'll go low. Smart, for a kid's cartoon anyway. It was pretty tough too, surviving a hell of a beating whilst trying to bring the Dinobots under control when they went on a mad rampage. Generally a safe pair of hands, until he got shot and his insides caught fire in the 86 movie. But he wasn't dead because he reappeared magically in the Headmasters, where he fought under Ultra Magnus to repel a huge attack from Six Shot's forces. He had one other appearance in the Headmasters, and that was it. If you're wondering how he came back from the dead, well, legend has it that the 86 movie didn't come out till later in Japan. Like several months later. So the Rises of Headmasters didn't actually know he was dead. I don't know. You'd have thought somebody would have put in a phone call. Many moons later, the multiverse heavy binal tech continuity would try to fix it, saying that this wasn't the original Prowl, and this guy was a different version from a different reality. There you go, fixed. Proving once again that there's no problem that doesn't have a multiversal solution. Marvel Comics, he had his own faction that earned the nickname the Magnificent Six, with Sunstreaker, Jazz, Inferno, Stampede, and Wheeljack, and they would run ops behind con lines, you know, sabotage missions and that kind of thing, and they ended up liberating a small town called Yus. The townspeople there were all yay at first, but as the reality of constant attacks from a con called Megadeth and his forces set in, they grew to resent Prowl and the Magnificent Six and ended up betraying them. And our guys were captured and tortured for weeks. Imagine putting your neck on the line just to have the people you're trying to save throw you under the bus like that. Fuck. Megadeth would torment our guys by forcing them to fight each other and kill each other. Eventually they'd managed to ambush him and left him to die in his own explosion. Later, when questioned about the incident by the Autobot higher-ups, Prowl pressured the other members of the Magnificent Six to forget what had happened and not report the whole truth. Perhaps he didn't want the Autobots to know the horrors they went through, but personally I think he did this because it would mean admitting his failure and that his strategy and decision to help the villagers was the wrong call. But you know what? This wouldn't be the only time he was betrayed by people he was trying to help. Marvel's depiction of the Sherman Dam incident, Meggsy blew up the dam shortly after his one-on-one with Opie, and Prowl led a team of the fastest Autobots to dig a load of trenches to divert all the dam waters, but were only half successful, and a nearby small town took a beating from the floodwaters as a result. And once again, these humans, the very people that Prowl was trying to save, turned on him and ran the Autobots off, not knowing the difference between Autobots and Decepticons. But again, that must have stung poor Prowly boy. Betrayal! He ended up strung up from the ceiling after the cons assaulted the Ark and Shockwave took a bunch of them prisoner. He was going to gut them, use them for spare parts, and then build a whole new army out of them. Prowl took control of the Autobots for a while Optimus's head was here in that famous scene, and he sent Jazz to negotiate a shady deal with this robot-hating millionaire called GB Blackrock. You see, the Earth-based Autobots were desperate for fuel at this stage and agreed to protect GB and his enterprises in return for his resources. Now, to begin with, this guy hated robots, vowing to exterminate them all. So this was very much a deal with the enemy. Over time, GB would come around, learning that it was the cons who were the evil ones. This deal ended up being pretty beneficial for both, with Prowl gaining not only the sustenance his troops needed, but also quite a powerful ally. Then he showed his outstanding loyalty to Prime when he fought to within an inch of his life and was one of the last Autobots standing on a mission to recover Prime's head. Oh, and he even waded into that putrid sewer swamp to fish his head out. Remember that? Check out my vid on Optimus if you don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, and then what happened? Well, Prime turned around and blasted him. Betrayal. This was, of course, because the head was a fake head made by Shockwave and temporarily turned Opie evil. But all the same, Prowl nearly single-handedly held off all of the cons long enough for Prime to swap to his real head. Then he used his powers of persuasion to rouse a rabble, prompting a fracture in the Autobot faction. And he did this because they wanted Optimus to use the creation powers of the Matrix to create these war robots called Ultimate Robots, these massive behemoths that would have been able to exterminate the whole Decepticon faction in one fell swoop. This showed that unlike Prime, he was willing to genocide the whole lot of them. Prowl was accused of thinking like a Decepticon and lowering the Autobots to the brutal standards of their enemy. Prowl's point of view was that if they did this, the war would be over in days and they would save countless Autobot lives. Of course, Optimus would never allow that to happen, and Prowl was told to shut the fuck up.
You see the palm of this hand, motherfucker? You're about to see it a hell of a lot closer.
He stated that he was done playing by Optimus's rules as he prepared to go full nuclear on the battle charges. Any caution that he'd had about collateral damage or human casualties went straight out the window as he prepared to fight fire with fire. There was the time that Prowl bollocked Jetfire for saving his life instead of completing the mission.
By the circuits on the inside of my mouth, I swear to God, Jetfire.
Another thing I love about Prowl is that he would try to get more expendable bots to go on missions instead of Optimus. So Optimus would be like,
there's only one way to stop this volcano erupting. Plugging the magma chamber with my own body.
Yep. We could do that. The thing is, we kind of need you and that thing in your chair, so, send B.
Fuck on your body!
Again, it just shows that Prowl sees the war like a game of chess, and, that he has to protect his most important pieces. He was pissed off when the Ripped to Shred Optimus gave leadership to Grimlock and not to him, and when Grimlock showed that he wasn't interested in working on the fragile truce between them and the Cons, it was left to Prowl to negotiate a shady peace deal between the two factions. Want some peace?
Okay.
And long story short, part of this deal involved telling the Cons of a plan to evacuate Cybertron.
We're gonna evacuate Cybertron. I can't go because I got.
See, at this time they needed to evacuate because Cybertron was out of Primus energies and started to fall apart. So they gathered up all these arcs and got ready to leave, but Cons being Cons, they used this info to steal all the ships, stranding the Autobots on the dying planet. But luckily, Grimlock had somehow anticipated their treachery and stashed an arc or two on the other side of the planet. And they followed the Decepticons to a planet called Clo, where they beat their asses. Prowl kind of accepted his place under Grimlock's leadership after this, although they would often clash, as he tried to balance out Grimmy's temper with his own reasoning and logic. He was shown to be one of Prime's closest confidants, as only he was invited to a sit-down with the Prez. I wonder if he only went along to see if the Prez could be trusted. Then there was the time Wheeljack unveiled his shiny new defense system, and everybody else was like, wow! But Prowl was like, actually, looks kinda mid. Yeah, first of all, he criticized how underpowered the whole system was, then took pleasure in pointing out that Wheeljack had made a pretty big mistake and turned the system on while all the Autobots were outside of the base. So then he had to find out the hard way that it wasn't actually all that underpowered at all. He made another shady deal with Starscream here, although he was kind of forced to go begging to him.
One protect. Okay.
For a device to save Dinobot Snarl. So Snarl developed Corrodia Gravis, which I'm pretty sure translates from Latin as
yo dick rusted off.
And Starscream, who was currently in charge of the Cons, was the only one to have compatible systems to fix him. So Prowl negotiated that the Autobots would protect Starscream's leadership against the newly returned Megatron. Shady. Prowl later made a deal with a reporter called Erwin Spoon.
One exclusive? Okay. Deal.
Trading an exclusive interview with then leader Grimlock in exchange for the little fleshling climbing all up inside Superion's innards to remove one of Bombshell's Cerebro shells.
I'll do anything for an interview. Wait, why is he bending over?
In Transformers 84, he was running double agents without Prime's approval. The main example being Counterpunch, who brought back intel that Shockwave had fired one of his new planetary turbines. So Prowl sent Perceptor and the Dinobots deep into enemy territory to investigate. By his logic, he didn't want to trouble Prime, who was busy supervising the building of the Ark. Once the Ark was finished, everybody was like, woo, we're getting out of here. He brought everybody down by reminding them that this was not an occasion to be celebrated. Yeah, Prowl's just got this knack to kill everyone's buzz. This one time he really did agree with Grimlock though, when both of them had to protect Prime from himself. So Prime insisted on going in alone to negotiate with Megatron, thinking that he could use his feelings to make Meg see common sense. And Prowl was like, dude, it's logically logical that he's gonna try and kill you, logically. Even the big brainless T-Rex can see that. But OP went in anyway, leaving Prowl biting his nails until Grimmy was like, this is stupid. And Prowl was like, yeah, this is stupid. And they both rode in and saved OP's life. Okay, so before we move on to the land of sunshine and rainbow happies that is IDW, let's talk real quick about the Cybertron games. Obviously, it's super exciting that they're coming out again, especially after the constant bummer that is Reactivate. So I figured the time might be right to resume my playthrough vids over on my gaming channel. What's most exciting to me about this whole thing is that the multiplayer servers will be live again, because I have never played a single minute of multiplayer. If you have any ideas for vids on the Cybertron games, hit me up in the comments. Also, make sure you're checking out my gaming channel, because I'm going to be playing through Rise of the Dark Spark pretty soon. Galactic Trials is out in October, and also Crossfire. Oh my god, that's so not who I am. Alright, on to IDW, where he was the shining star to graduate from the Iaconian Mecha Forensic Division, where his fondness for ordering autopsies for the most minute of reasons pushed the medics to their limit, and quickly garnered him a reputation for being obsessed with the tiniest details. He learned to be economical with the truth when Orion Pax of all people wanted to keep sensitive information about a series of murders from the higher-ups, but Prowl ignored him and told his superiors, only to find this information being broadcast on the primetime news the very next day. There was obviously a leak leak somewhere. I remember the Senate at this stage in IDW was pretty corrupt. I reckon he learned most of his duplicitous ways from working under Sentinel Prime. He could see that Sentinel was far, far from a saint, but tried to change his ways, often talking him out of his most destructive of plans. He was unable to stop Starscream from assassinating the senators, nor unable to stop Megatron from taking control of the city of Kaon, or beating the crap out of Sentinel Prime. But this whole experience made him distrustful of pretty much everyone, and he vowed to keep watch on those in power as much as their subjects from then on. One of his first cases under Zeta Prime's new regime was a gun-running operation involving corrupt members of his own police force. He investigated a young bot called Bumblebee who was having nightmares that was somehow causing him to commit atrocious acts. Then he arrested Roadbuster when he started brutalizing his own cadets for some mysterious reason. Talked about that in other videos. But his next shady deal was when he started working with evil scientist Methosulas.
Let's make some bombs.
Okay.
And together they would work on weapon systems like stasis bullets, the process of spark extraction, and Deceptibombs. So Deceptibombs had a high enough yield to destroy an entire city, and were unleashed upon a city called Carpessa. Now this city was a neutral city, and after the bomb went off, Prowl engineered that the Decepticons be blamed for it, so all of the survivors joined up with the Autobots. He's murdered a bunch of people just to get more soldiers for his army. That is horrific. As the years passed though, Prowl would start to have second thoughts about working with Methosulas, especially when he found out that he was working on a thing called the Noise Maze, which was kind of a pocket dimension that served as a prison for Bot's mind. He also had reservations about Methosulas creating an artificial life form called Osteros, who would later turn out to be Springer. So, seeing that Methosulas was going too far in many respects, Prowl made another shady deal with Impactor,
Kill this dude for me.
Okay.
to trap Methosulas in the Noise Maze, in return for Prowl destroying all of the horrific weapons that they'd created together. But neither Prowl nor Impactor could bring themselves to kill Osteros, and instead wiped his memes, changed his name, and threw him into the records with a slap on the ass and an off you go, having him watched over by Cup, who they thought would have a better influence on Springer than either of they could. And he did, and seeing what a fucking hero Springer turned out to be, secretly made Prowl proud inside. After they discovered that Zeta Prime had created new super weapons to drain Cybertronians of their life force, Prowl wanted to turn the weapons on the Decepticons to be rid of them once and for all. Same as before though, Optimus refused and ordered that these weapons be destroyed, and Prowl was like, yeah, okay, sure boss, and then secretly stuck a bunch of them down his trouser for later use. When the Junkions were brought in to fight for Megatron, Prowl traveled to their planet to engage Shockwave, battling the Cyclops over the planet's gravimetric core. We don't know for sure, but it could well have been Prowl that gave the order to detonate the core rather than have it fall into Shockwave's hands, an order that would result in the destruction of the entire planet Junkion. He would participate in the development of the Aequita supercomputer that could tell if a bot was innocent or guilty by reading their minds. And although he had his reservations about this, you know, like judging someone by their thoughts rather than their actions, this was definitely another shady deal that he had made with Chief Justice Tyrest.
Let's judge them all.
Okay.
The slightly demented whackjob who drilled holes in his own face for pleasure. Again, it seemed that Prowl realized that Tyrest was nuts, trying to get him to retire on more than one occasion, but he did like his plan to build the giantest, biggest space prison the universe had ever seen. Thing is, over the years, they used Aequitas not just on Decepticons, but Autobots too, and they built up this huge database of nasty little secrets. I think I even remember reading somewhere that Prowl himself was one of the early test subjects during its development, so this thing contained records of all of his war crimes too. Anyway, let's put a pin in that because that's going to come back later. Then he got stationed on Earth, where he almost threw Ratchet in the brig for breaking cover, even though the medic did it to save some human lives. Prowl's like, human lives. He didn't want to send a rescue mission to help Cup when he crash landed on a zombie planet, reasoning that it would only cost more Autobot lives. And he's just so old, is it really worth it? He went along on a mission to neutralize Dr. Doom's psycho prison, but only to make sure Ratchet didn't put human interests above Autobot interests. Then he put a control chip inside of Cup. Yeah, after they retrieved Cup from zombie planet, Prowl became super frustrated of the Autobots' tendency to put these kind of gung-ho warrior figures on a pedestal rather than listening to reason, i.e. him. So when the time came for Cup to be rebuilt, he added some of his own code that would allow Prowl to control Cup. He knew that his words coming out of Cup's mouth had a better chance of getting listened to. Oh, shady. And round about here, he spoke of how he kind of admired the cons. Here, listen to what he says here. They have their own rogue elements, the Scorponok's, Bludgeons, and Thunderwings, but for the most part, they act as one. To be honest, this is not something I agree with. I mean, if you think about the amount of times the cons would have been successful if not for Starscream trying a power grab or something dumb like that. Like, I was even thinking about doing a video about all the times that infighting has ruined the Decepticon plans. But the point he's trying to make is here. They may have sinister goals, but there's nothing evil about reason, analysis, discipline, Logic. Why can't these be the tools of the Autobots? It's also roundabout here that he got slapped upside the canister by Springer. Later, when Optimus ended up in a robo-coma, Jazz was given command over Prowl and the task of keeping the Insecticon horde at bay. And Prowl agreed to keep the secret that the Energon missions Jazz kept sending the Autobots on were just to keep them busy and stop them turning on each other. Like Ironhide did here when all the frustrations boiled to the surface and he slapped Prowl upside the canister. Even worse than all of this though, Jazz and Prowl withheld the fact that the matrix of leadership was no longer in Optimus's chest, but had been stolen by Megatron. Once Prime was back in the picture, he ordered Prowl to assist humans in rebuilding after the latest Transformers battle. And Prowl let a police officer drive around in him for several months. He saw the humans do pretty horrible things and saw how dangerous they could be. For example, he had to sit and watch as the humans discovered thrust trapped in a building and then set fire to it. He made no secret of the fact that he thought human life to be worth less than Cybertronian life, often trying to persuade Optimus to abandon the planet altogether. Sounds to me like he even put Decepticon life above human life. He had an epiphany moment though when he broke cover to rescue a young girl and came to see the value of human life in the process. He also broke cover to stop humans from killing Stunticon Breakdown, even though it meant he himself was taken prisoner as the humans used their mode lock devices to stop him transforming. Hot Rod put together a mission to rescue him, but human outfit Skywatch escalated the situation and Ironhide was killed as a result. And because he was Optimus's closest friend, Optimus stepped down as leader for a bit. Optimus being the only thing keeping Prowl attached to Earth, Prowl teamed up with Hot Rod to get the hell out of here. Thing is, they didn't have a ship, so they had to make another shady deal to collaborate with the cons to build a space cruiser. Let's get off this rock. Okay. Prowl did have reservations about the collaboration and was proven right, as the cons would soon betray Hot Rod and the other bots. Betrayal. Then there was the Mars Attacks crossover. There he fought side by side with Astrotrain. Then he found out that Aequitas hadn't been destroyed as he'd previously thought, so he sent in the Wreckers to stop it from falling into enemy hands. Many bots died this day just to cover up his nasty little secrets, including Iron Fist, who he personally selected. And when I say personally selected, I actually mean manipulated. Yeah, he used the fact that Iron Fist was a Wreckers superfan to get him to go along, unlock Aequitas, and download all of its information. Too much information for his naive little mind though, and he died of a mechanical aneurysm. Prowl would try to reason that he was dying anyway because of this lab accident that he had ages ago, but damn, no, it's still really shifty. In the Infestation series, he used Cup. Remember he'd implanted him with some code that would pretty much enable him to remote control the old boy? To trap a zombie army and its leader called Brit in the dead universe, along with Cup himself. Who needs enemies when you got friends like these, right? Apparently he was stuck there for 4 billion years. Another shady deal of sorts was after the whole D-Void Mega Combiner Rampage and the Cybertronians who'd been scattered across the galaxy returned to their home planet. So that whole thing created a situation where you had good guys, bad guys, and neutrals all mixing together and creating quite a volatile melting pot. Prowl had most of the worst villains in cells, but the neutrals, who Prowl had named Nails, rebelled because they didn't like being governed by the same people who destroyed the planet. And Prowl, outnumbered 20-1, had to cut a deal to release the cons to help suppress the rioting. You want to get out of jail? Okay. He did make sure they had control chips in their heads though, which stopped them transforming or killing anyone. And most importantly, could be detonated if Prowl, felt like it.
What you say to me?
Nothing, I just sneezed. Ah!
Oh, it was a sneeze? Then Rodimus announced that he was off on another adventure, taking Ultra Magnus with him and leaving Prowl to deal with this shitty situation with the nails. He couldn't dissuade anyone from going, so he goaded Rodimus into secretly taking Overlord along so that Chrome Dome could read his mind and learn about the Phase 6ers. Chrome Dome refused. Prowl threatened to blackmail him. Chrome Dome smacked him upside the canister and wiped some of his mems. Once he woke up from that, he planted a tracking device on the Lost Light and planted 2 spies aboard. Was like, alright, see you, have fun. Then, those Decepticons he'd recruited to help police the neutrals, well, they needed policing themselves. And Ratbat emerged as the voice of the cons, demanding that the cons be treated equally. And when Prowl got word that he was going to have Bumblebee killed, Prowl sent his own assassin to whack Ratbat, passing that one off as a suicide. Yeah, I guess he just stabbed himself through the chest and pinned himself to the wall. Soon after that, explosions started rocking Cybertron, and lo and behold, Starscream helped Wheeljack find the culprit, and Prowl reluctantly awarded Starscream a place on the Council of Leaders as a reward for helping protect the innocent. Aerial bot Silverbolt got pissed off about that one though, and Prowl got smacked upside the canister again. Oh, he also took one in the mouth from Skywalk, but I think he ended up winning this fight in the end. Then there was a time he executed someone. Okay, so he was a murderer, there was that. Basically, a bunch of murders were tracked back to Insecticon Bombshell, who had managed to get around his control chip. When Prowl found himself one-on-one with the suspect and he refused to give any details on his co-conspirators, Prowl mercilessly blew his brains out. Turns out that Dirge had witnessed the whole thing, so he tried to kill him too. He almost lynched Skybite in public after he found out that he might be collaborating with the cons, until he was stopped by Ironhide. Wait, I thought Ironhide died not that long ago. What happened here? He moaned at the Dinobots for wanting to keep their Earth alt modes, and now Swoop's killing Ironhide. What the fuck is going on? He then set up this whole thing where Omega Supreme got blowed up, seemingly by terrorists. So he led his own troops into this base to find the culprits, namely Shockwave and Soundwave, a base that he got RC to booby trap so they'd all get blowed up and the cons could be blamed for their murders. And the fact that he was caught in his blast himself would exonerate him of blame. He got an upgraded body and alt mode, but the thing is, so did the Decepticons that were supposedly blown up. And the shock horror plot twist was that Prowl had been working with the Decepticons the whole time. Well, not the whole time and not willingly. So you remember when he killed Bombshell? Well, apparently then, Bombshell infected him with a Cerebro device, and he'd been under Bombshell's mind control the whole entire time. Whilst under the mind control, he executed Wheeljack, completely blowing his head off. I found pretty shocking, to be honest. Now, I find it interesting that this whole time he'd been under Bombshell's control and that all of his actions were actually Bombshell's, but not a single Autobot noticed, which says something, right? Yeah, here, he even regains control for a second and he asks Bumblebee, like, how could you not see? And Bumblebee's like, And then he started transforming against his will to become part of a newly refurbished Devastator. And became its head. And set out to attack Autobot headquarters, and specifically the medbay, because that's where the most horrific casualties could be inflicted. Oh my god, he's just gone after a hospital. Apparently, Prowl was conscious throughout this whole rampage, but firmly under the control of Bombshell, so was unable to do anything about it. That was until RC killed Bombshell, quick flaming sword to the face, which knocked Devastator offline temporarily, but he came back online completely out of control now, to literally rip Superion in half. It was Ironhide who eventually managed to get through to Prowl inside of Devastator's psyche, after slapping him in the face, of course, convincing him to stop the devastation, and Prowl ripped Devastator's head off. Constructicons would later show up on his doorstep going, "Hey, buddy! Your man was pretty messed up. We liked it. Let's do it again. You want some chili? Let's have some chili." Bumblebee was like, "Hold on, well, all that stuff was under the control of Bombshell, right?" And RC was like, "Yeah, apart from the whole Ratbat assassination." And then Swoop started laughing about it like, "Ha ha ha, murder!" He would later agree to form this version of Devastator again, but oh, that's a deal, right? Get the graphic! Wanna fight the big ugly?
Okay.
Only when he had no choice to fight off Monstructor and save a wounded Metroplex. You'd do it again later to cover the Autobot escape after they went in to rescue Alpha Trion. He taunted Chrome Dome on his recent loss of the love of his life, Rewind, something that only happened because Prowl put Overlord on the lost life. Overlord would later tell Chrome Dome that he pulled off 3 of Rewind's limbs and then bit off his head to stop him screaming. Yeah, like I said, this was all because of Prowl, so Chrome Dome threw him over a cliff. But Ultra Magnus showed up and bollocked him for the mess that he'd caused by putting Overlord on the Lost Light. And said something interesting in the process, that he was glad that he had the Constructicons as his new friend, because other than them, he was the loneliest bot he'd ever met. Youch. Now right here, there's something we need to talk about. Right before Chrome Dome throws Prowl off the cliff, Prowl touches the back of his neck in a kind of random way, if you know what I mean, and it feels like there might have been something between the two of them. So I looked it up, and one of the writers once said that there was something there way back when, and that's why Chrome Dome's new partner Rewind was constantly insulting Prowl. It's only ever alluded to and never confirmed though. Of course, he wanted to execute Megatron when he defected rather than go to the trouble of putting him on trial, but he was overjoyed to have Optimus make him lead prosecutor in the case. As the trial went on, Megatron not only changed his plea from guilty to not guilty, he requested to be tried by the Knights of Cybertron, which Optimus allowed, much to Prowl's fury. He painted Cosmos up in stealth camo and used him to spy on a conversation between Alpha Trion and Optimus about the Matrix of Combination. And then we have the whole Spike Witwicky can of worms. You ready for this? Okay, deep breath. The whole thing starts when Megs randomly surrenders and starts squawking about how one of his troops was murdered after he'd surrendered. And Prowl had to go on this whole investigation to see if there was any truth to it. Turned out that Spike did kill Scrapper out of revenge for Devastator collapsing a bunch of tunnels on a good friend of his. Now on top of that, and perhaps even more seriously, it turned out that the human outfit who were hunting the bots at the time, they were called Skywatch, were getting all of their weaponry derived from Cybertronian tech, from Spike, who was buying it from Swindle. So all of the bots that they killed and captured, it was because of this guy. Now, this is not the version of Spike that you might be used to. He claims here that he never really trusted any of the Cybertronians, and when he asked Prowl if he ever trusted him in return, Prowl answers that he actually did. You know how big a deal that is, right? For Prowl to trust someone and to have that trust broken must have hurt deep.
Very deep.
So yet another
betrayal.
Spike got away too, so Prowl must have felt beaten on top of everything. And he took this really, really personally. So that's the backstory. Jumping back again, he got a lead on Spike, and now that Prowl had the Constructicons to back him up, he told them that they were going after Spike again. By what he says here, he wasn't out to go for a coffee and a catch-up and maybe do some tickles. He was out for blood. Like, check it out, the Constructicons are all laughing and stuff, and he cuts in and he goes, "If you could kill any living creature in the universe, who would it be?" And they all stop laughing. And then he goes, "Spike Witwicky just resurfaced." Once he found him, he ripped open an arcade and generally tore his way through the whole city to get to him. And when he finally did get him, he didn't kill him. He told him that he forgave him, that he understood why he did what he did, and the two found a kind of common ground. And it was just generally a lovely, warm moment. And guess what? They made a deal for Spike to help the bots get the Enigma of Combination in return for Prowl helping him get revenge for the murder of Spike's father. You want all that stuff I just said? Okay. Of course, this deal was shady. Prowl hadn't forgiven Spike, Spike's father hadn't been murdered, and Prowl had just manipulated the whole deal to get the Enigma and still intended to kill Spike after. This guy holds a grudge like I've never seen. Prowl combined with the Constructicons and went on another massive rampage. The combined forces of the Autobots and the Decepticons, unable to bring him down. Did get his hands on the Enigma though. Let it slip out of his grasp as he tried to squish Spike like a bug. And when I say slip through his fingers, he actually threw it at RC in a rage. Once RC managed to get them to decombine, Prowl blamed the Constructicons for his actions, sort of implying that he was only interested in the Enigma and that it was the Constructicons who were the one who went nuts trying to kill Spike. Remember that they were hellbent on revenge for the murder of Scrapper. But this guy saying that's not how it works, boss, implies to me that a part of Prowl wanted Spike dead too. Then he ripped Optimus a new one because Optimus gave the Enigma to Starscream and allowed him access to the Cybertronian colony planets, namely Maximus. Prowl went nuts at how stupid Optimus was being, trusting Starscream like this, and thought it was Screamy's first step to setting up his own empire. So Prowl traveled to Maximus with the Constructicons, saying that Maximus would have to be cut off from the Space Bridge network to ensure the safety of the universe, even if it came at the cost of Cybertron and everyone on it. Yes, he just threatened to destroy Cybertron. He didn't go that far though, but did try and destroy Maximus' Space Bridge, and it took both Superion and Defensor to stop him. Starscream wanted Prowl executed, but OP ordered him arrested. And Prowl flew into a rage that Starscream would never change and Optimus was playing with fire. He's not wrong though, is he? Because true enough, Starscream used Menasor and Devastator, without Prowl this time, to attack, and Prowl ordered Rattrap to use the Enigma to merge Prowl, Optimus, Ironhide, Mirage, and Sunstreaker into Optimus Maximus. And in merging his mind with the other Autobots, he came to understand their thinking, their belief in the power of each other. And as they reached a kind of harmony between them, Optimus Maximus reached its full potential and beat the Combiners. After this, Prowl was arrested for his actions, and he and Optimus had a punch-up when OP tried to reason with him. This was because after everything they'd been through, Prowl still wouldn't budge from his viewpoint that morals belonged nowhere near military strategy in the decision-making process. Basically, if you had to destroy a planet to win the war, push the fucking button, destroy it, even if it's full of life. That was his point of view. So OP snapped, punched him, and then pushed him out of a window. And the two nearly killed each other. This sequence felt a little out of character for both of them, I gotta say, but basically it ended with Optimus de-escalating and Prowl escaping with the help of his ally Rattrap, and he went on the run. I wonder if Prowl actually meant what he said about destroying Cybertron. I wonder if it actually came to that. Would he be prepared to push the button in the name of the greater good? Let me know what you guys think. Then Methosaurus reared his ugly head again in an upgraded body and with a new name, Tarantulas. He tried to force Prowl into a shady deal, blackmailing him with the data from the Aequitas supercomputer on all the Autobot war crimes. I told you that would get important later, which he threatened to release if Prowl refused to rekindle their crazy mad scientist bromance, which created such beautiful tools of death and destruction. Prowl did refuse though. You wanna get the band back together? Fuck off! So he was put in a device called Impetus, which extracted people's guilt. Prowl then tried to make a shady deal with Hubcap, who it turned out was one of Tarantulas' spies. Hubcap was still pissed because he thought that Roadbuster should have been executed for his part in the killing of several cadets. So Hubcap finally came around and liberated Prowl. And for his actions, Prowl pulled a gun on him, saying that he had too much dangerous information to be allowed to live. Hubcap pleaded for his life, and Prowl was about to let him go when Impactor blew his brains out. Cup smacked Prowl upside the head for mind controlling him for so long, and both Cup and RC vowed to never work with Prowl again. He got a little bit close to working his way back into the good books when his old boss Sentinel Prime resurfaced, getting his murder on and kidnapping Prime and Soundwave. And Prowl helped track them down, figure out his plan to resuscitate an army of undead titans, and help separate Sentinel from his Titan Master, kind of neutralizing the threat. Then as the threat of Unicron started drawing nearer, Prowl began working on ways to counter the Maximal army, so he dug up the Vampark Ribbon weapon system from the days of Zeta Prime. He saved the Throttlebots from the Maximals as they were stranded on some barren space rock without backup, but then he was pretty quick to write off Cybertron as Unicron food, stating that they would have a better chance to defend Earth. When they arrived there, he was sent to counter Shockwave, which I thought was pretty fitting considering how many similarities there are between the two characters. And he actually saved him as he was about to be killed by Rhinox. His last moments in this continuity might have been his most poignant, a discussion with Shockwave on the dark side of logic, and stating that the true enemy in this war was not the Autobots or the Decepticons, but the dark side within each of us. And there is no victory until you've conquered that. He also said that although both he and Shockwave ultimately just wanted peace, they both went about achieving it in completely the wrong way, and it's people's actions that matter and not their intentions. And this is one of the reasons I like IDW so much. I mean, sure, it's complicated, it jumps back and forth, it feels like there's 100 storylines going on at once sometimes. It's pretty inconsistent with Prowl at times, like that one time he was prepared to destroy his own planet, and that other time he nearly killed Optimus. But it's one of the only continuities that's managed to give all of these characters their own arc, their own backstory that explains why they are the way they are, their own conflict, and their own resolutions. He cheered on Bumblebee, even though Optimus had already won the race in Creo Transformers, and he featured in War for Cybertron Siege, which I thought was pretty fitting considering Siege was dark, gritty, and utterly humorless, kind of like the man himself. Tell you what, Prowl must have loved going to Equestria with the My Little Ponies. Why did Siege make him so small? Here he was pretty distrustful of Turncoat Jetfire, and talked about that whole blow their heads up if they don't do what you want thing. Seriously though, why did they make him so small? He felt indebted to Optimus for saving his life in Cyberverse, and traded weapons techniques with Decepticon's Shadow Striker during a brief period of peace talks between the bots and the cons. Wanna swap some boom booms?
Okay.
Before he would return Optimus's favor and save his life, leaping in front of a laser blast to save the Big Red, and giving his life up in the process. Energon had a much more one-dimensional portrayal of the character. He swore an oath to protect Planet Q, but he must have been off picking strawberries or something when Unicron came knocking because he wasn't around to stop it getting destroyed, and vowed to help Alpha Q collect the vast amounts of Energon required to restore it. He took command of a bunch of Terracons to head off Megatron's artificial comet that he'd sent to raise the planet, and of course, he gave up his individuality as his body became pure energy and fused together with the other combination sparks, which helped Optimus power links with Omega Supreme and eventually plunged Galvatron into the sun. Another deal that he made was in Transformers Animated, where he started out as a devout pacifist.
Why should I risk my chassis for anyone? Nobody ever risks their chassis for me.
And tried to dodge the draft into the Autobot army. He was arrested and taken to Yokotron's dojo, where the old martial arts master saw potential in him and bargained to train him in exchange for keeping him out of prison.
Can I not go to prison, please?
Okay.
So this wasn't a shady deal like some of the others, as it proved pretty beneficial for all involved, Prowl showing a natural talent for the martial arts, even getting telekinetic abilities as a result, and soon got the task of protecting these protoforms that were supposedly the future of the Cybertronian race. Yokotron was murdered, and Prowl tried to put his spark energy into one of these protoforms, but Yokotron told him that he couldn't trade a little of the future to save the past, and that he would understand one day. You can't shady deal your way out of this one, Prowl, old boy. But as a result, he went through a large part of the series racked by guilt at not being able to protect the protoforms or prevent Yokotron's murder. And that might go a little way to explaining why he'd so often push back against the team dynamic.
Only one bot I depend on. Me.
For instance, when he went solo against this creature made of nanites and had his shiny metal buttocks handed to him. Later, he made an off-the-books alliance with Lockdown to apprehend Starscream. You're not going to give me some armor and betray me, are you?
No, no.
So Lockdown gave him some armor. And surprise, surprise!
Betrayal.
Now, don't take it like that.
He developed quite an affinity for birds in this one, and when he accidentally destroyed a bird's nest, he realized that the modifications from the suit of armor were making him more aggressive than usual, so he promised to get rid of the armor once the mission was complete. I see that one as like a deal with nature. And once he finally did collar Starscream, Lockdown tried to make another alliance, but
So, how about you ditching those losers and going to business with me?
Prowl was like, why don't you go yourself? He made a deal with B that if the yellow bot could shut up for 10 cycles, he'd give him a bunch of axle grease.
Bumblebee, for once, can't you keep quiet?
He agreed to train Sari Sumdak. You're definitely not a robot, are you?
No.
This was before they found out that she was a robot herself, of course, and he persuaded Omega Supreme to reject Megatron's control and reassert his own, before giving up his spark and sacrificing himself to stop the Lugnut Supremes from blowing up the city. And he went grey. Prowl would appear once more as an Allspark ghost to carry Prime away to safety, and the sight of his dead body motivated Prime to fight the shit out of Megatron and almost kill him, before Prowl's body was taken back to Cybertron. He was approached by G1 Prowl, who wanted to trade weight loss tips. Animated Prowl obviously being a lot skinnier. I got that joke. I got it. In the Defiance comics, which was part of the movie universe, and told of how Megatron fell under the influence of the Fallen, Prowl was head of the security services as usual, but working under Megs at this stage. He agreed with Optimus to covertly investigate Megs and found this artifact pertaining to the Fallen in his quarters. And when Megatron discovered what they were doing, he sent Prowl to arrest Optimus. Prowl was kind of confused, but as Megs was his superior, he complied. But then Megatron sent Starscream to ambush and kill them all. So Prowl helped OP escape and join Team Prime. In the Covenant of Primus, he started out as an engineer and helped drive the Quintessence into space, but had to watch his best friend Blue Streak killed. Basically, there was an outbreak of Rust Plague and the Council ordered the destruction of the Space Bridge network to contain it, and Blue Streak was killed when one exploded. There was also a brief alliance with the Cons in the Aligned novels, where there was this whole thing on a planet called Aquatron, where Prowl was instrumental in freeing both Autobots and Decepticons from the clutches of the Quintessons and coordinated both factions to find Optimus and Megs in a bunch of wreckage. Obviously, Shattered Glass Prowl was evil. Duh. Shockwave's yellow in this universe. Fell out with Megatron for being too brutal with protesters, convincing others to turn against Optimus, who was also evil, and then try to overthrow him in a coup. But when that failed, Prowl went off by himself and took control of 1/3 of Cybertron, and developed a reputation as one of the most fearsome of the 3 Autobot warlords. His territory was once described as a place where everyone was on the menu. Even for Shattered Glass, this guy was a barbarian. So to conclude, and looking at this character in the broader context of all of the continuities, I think the key to this character is in that scene right before he and OP come to blows, where Optimus talks about all of the betrayals he's had to endure. And it's true. He goes to save people, they turn against him. He talks sense, the others are like, boring, let's crash a spaceship into their faces, that'll be more fun. People he's respected have turned on him. He was blacklisted for following Optimus. But all that considered, he's always been faithful to the cause and had the best interests of the Autobots and Optimus Prime at heart. That's the way he sees it anyway. So maybe all of this goes just a little way to explain why he is the way he is, and why he is one of the most compelling characters in the whole franchise. Alright, you guys, hope you enjoyed that nearly as much as I enjoyed making it. The Starscream spotlight is getting close, but I think the next one will be a vid on some of the times OP and Megs have teamed up and why. So make sure you're subscribed for that, and until then, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Cheerio, bye!